Or, in other words, Mo meets Sergio, Sergio Mo. And he boils it down to that moment as well. Nobody will ever really know what Sergio Ramos intended as he grabbed Mo Salah's arm and tumbled to the ground in contact. And Barney's been very careful. This was probably an entirely innocent coming together. However, he says, I think with a nod and a wink, in slow motion, it looked more like an expert Secret Service judo move, the kind of thing you spend 3 years in a camp in the Swiss Alps learning to pull off in a crowded train station without breaking stride, along with the blow dart to the neck and the sword stick umbrella.
It was funny enough, my nine-year-old has no interest in football, but I forced him to watch the game last night. But he does jiu-jitsu, and when that happened, he said, I know how to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a huge moment, and then you get to Karius, actually. Well, and do you know, one thing which isn't remarked here, and I guess, Bernard, you'd have an insight, is you wouldn't have seen it in the first half, but there were a few injuries. Carvajal had to go after Madrid right back. Like, so Mo Salah, when he gets injured, floods of tears.
Yeah.
Like, instant crying. You know, you think, how often in your life do you instantly cry? Yeah. Something pretty traumatic happens. Carvajal goes down, instantly crying, like his back was going up and down, his face down, just instant floods of tears.
But I think the World Cup could have a factor with both of those.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, particularly with Salah, because he is such an iconic figure in Egypt, and it's such a big deal for Egypt to be there.
No, I accept all of that, but Karius in tears as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if we saw this level of emotion as frequently even 20 years ago. Personally, I don't think we did, but it's the emotional state that these guys are in which struck me. Like, they're all blubbering messes, actually.
It's
they're
very
all
strange.
Over the place.
You know, we think back to like Gaza and things like that.
I was just going to say,
But, you know, you're right, you would imagine now with all the expertise they have in terms of sports psychology, getting yourself into the right state mentally. I mean, I would question whether that's a good state to be in if you break down immediately. I mean, even in terms of actually the message it sends to your teammates.
Yeah.
You know, Salah is obviously the go-to guy for Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know, him going off in tears wouldn't send the right message to the rest of the team. You know, what you want someone going off there is, it's no big deal. We carry on.
And maybe even a come on.
Yeah, like for example, let's say Nasira goes off for 20 minutes. There was, it wasn't okay. They showed him on the bench with a hoodie over him, but Leinster just stuck to the process. You know, you can't. And for me, maybe it's symptomatic of football and soccer a little bit that they all see it as being all about them.
Yeah, I think they're gutted for themselves.
But also, I think
that sounds harsh, but I do think that's the truth.
I think it might be a byproduct of the Klopp way as well, because the Klopp way is based so much in emotion, I think, and passion, and like, you know, there's clips going around where of him drinking with some fans at 6 a.m. this morning and singing songs. Like, it's all about this this bond.
Oh yeah, sorry, we have that audio.
Emotional bond.
Sorry, I hadn't seen this video. I still haven't seen this video. We have the audio of Klopp singing, do we, lads? Yeah, okay, so Klopp on a video where we were talking 5, 6 in the morning, somewhere in Kiev last night. Okay, here he is. I haven't seen this.
Madrid and all the back. We swear we keep on being cool. We bring it back to Liverpool. We saw the European Cup. Madrid and all the fucking back. We swear we
okay, so I'm sure he got a picture there. I mean, he's entitled to go and have a good time, isn't he?
Absolutely, and it's the end of their season as well, so I know people will pick on it and say, how could you do that after losing a final? But I think it's an important point to be made as well. We get obsessed with winners, like just whoever finishes up on the podium. But what Liverpool have done this season is very significant.
Sure.
And, you know, and it's definitely give them a platform to push on. Like, it's very unusual to get to a Champions League final from the qualifying rounds. I think only Liverpool in 2005 have won it from a qualifying round.
Yeah. I'm conscious we're not going through the papers here. Can you give me some... What pieces did you like? Where are you taking me? Because I mentioned Miguel's take on the Ramos and Stephen Hunt. And then Barney Renee. I know Oliver Kay made the point on Karius as well. He said, hearteningly those inside the ground applauded him. Nobody should vilify Karius. Nobody should humiliate him. In that moment, we saw the pain and anguish that comes of a mistake on such a high-profile stage. At 24, he's still so young in goalkeeping terms, but last night will live with him for a long time.
Yeah.
Stephen Hunt is looking at Karius, where he said his error for the third goal was unforgivable. It was noticeable none of the Liverpool players went over to console Karius at the final whistle. It looks like they've had enough of him too. Maybe they were too distraught with their own issues, I don't know.
Yeah, but it did, like, it jumped out at a lot of people that, that's mentioned in a few pieces. Oliver Kay mentioned it in the Sunday Times as well. And I thought it was off. Like, I know I don't like making comparisons with other sports, but it did remind me of when Rob Hennelly the situation with Mayo. The Mayo players went to him straight after that game. Paul Durkin for Donegal in the 2014 final. Carl Lacey went to him straight at the final whistle, sat beside him on the turf. That he must have felt very isolated, especially because if you see some of the long shots, there's cameramen, TV cameramen and photographers all around him. And you can imagine you're going through all this very public, harrowing experience, and you know the cameraman's in your face, you know millions of people are watching, and you think, it's somebody come and take me away from this, or you know.
Eventually the goalkeeping coach went over.
Yeah, he did, John
Carr.
Achterberg, and I think Klopp was a fault in, but I have a bit of sympathy for Klopp because I think he's lost 6 major fans. I would say he was very raw, and I would say he felt quite embittered at that moment
It's
towards
hard.
his goalkeeper.
It must be hard burner than those, because it looked to me, well, Milner was out on his feet, Jordan Henderson, who's the captain, when it cut to them at the final whistle, they almost were dealing with their own issue. They kind of were hunched over themselves, and maybe it was just that bit too much at that point to walk all the way over to Karius, who is disconsolate anyway.
Yeah, I think Jamie Carr actually left his TV spot to make his way down to the field. He was one of the first guys to him.
Really?
Yeah, honestly, he threw his headphones off, and he was one of the first guys to try and comfort him. Listen, again, it's probably Real Madrid, you know, probably used to being in finals, but probably for some of those Liverpool players, they realised this was maybe once in a career opportunity to win it, and then, as you say, they were dealing with their own personal disappointment. But I do think that the senior players in that group, and definitely, I'm sure Klopp, you know, we'll look back on it and regret not going and showing a more support for the player.
Yeah, because Klopp in the press conference did speak very much in support to Karius, and I think probably what, you know, I would say he regrets not going to him straight away.
Karius said,
but like Karius was just
Karius said in the dressing room, people were very good with him.
Yeah.
So the players tried to cheer me up.
And in fairness, I have to give him credit. He fronted up as well. He did the interviews after the game, which must have been very difficult. Like nobody would have blamed him if he didn't do that. So.
Stephen Hunt is having nothing about Karius last night. He doesn't just have an issue with obviously the Benzema goal and the second Bale goal. He also thinks the overhead kick he's not so sure about. He's saying, I would question Karius for that goal too. He was not set properly. He dived rather than taking a step so that he was in a position to stop the shot into the top corner, and it came from across.
I think looking at that, I think he might have thought it was going over the bar.
It did loop a bit.
Yeah, because he kind of dived and he didn't put up an arm, but he kind of ducked away from it. So I wondered, did he think it wasn't going to dip? So.
The interesting thing now is it career ruining for him.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating thing. Where does he go from here? I mean, is it Liverpool? Is it somewhere else? Can he rebound? I think it'll be, if he does come back from this and becomes a world-class goalkeeper, or shows he's a world-class goalkeeper, it's going to show unbelievable mental strength, which I think we want from our place kickers in rugby, we want from our free takers in hurling and GA, and we want from our goalkeepers in football. So it's an opportunity for him to really show unbelievable resilience, you know, or break.
And we saw really ugly side to the modern world as well afterwards. The abuse he got on social media from supposed fans was absolutely disgraceful. Like,
he's been routinely told, I hope you die and I hope your kids die.
Yeah, and they get called Nazis and everything. Like, it's just, it's dreadful stuff. And I remember reading in a history of Manchester United a few years ago, Paddy Roach, who's Dubliner, played in goals for a while for United in the 70s. But he had a very rough spell as their goalkeeper. And in one game in particular against Liverpool at Anfield, he more or less dropped a couple into the net. And every game after that for United, the United fans booed their own goalkeeper. And 30 years later, he was interviewed, and he said it still affected him. It changed his personality. He became very nervous and jittery. And you'd wonder, like, psychologically, we talk a lot about mental health and sport, and the abuse that guy got, and I hope he gets support now.
Yeah,
like, even if Liverpool are going to move him on, back him up.
Don't do it in a horrible way.
Yeah.
I'm just going to break off briefly just to bring people a quick update on the hurling and the Leinster quarter-final between Carlow and Kildare. Dave McIntyre, firstly, in Semple Stadium. Dave, about 22 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, we've had a brilliant start to this game, Joe. It's Cork leading Tip by 9 points to 6, 22 minutes played. Tipperary didn't wake up until nearly 10 minutes into this game when they trailed by 7 points to no score. And it looked for all the world that they just picked up from where they left off against Limerick a week ago. But then a huge moment, a big goal from Jason Ford, a rocket-like finish into the top corner. That was followed by points from Brendan Maher and Noel McGrath. And suddenly it was just a 3-point game. Cork have got the last two, though. Shane Kingston has got one at full forward, and Seamus Harnedy with his fourth. Brilliant leadership from him captaining the side. So Cork have steadied the ship somewhat, the momentum just ebbing one way and flowing the next. 23 minutes on the clock. It's Cork 9, Tip 6.
Very good. Let's go to our Leinster football Quarter-final then, it's Carlo against Kildare. Bernard Jackman's awaiting the word on.
Carlo, it is good news that they are 1-4 to 1-3 up at the moment inside 24 minutes at this point. It's been a quite incredible game actually. Carlo started much the better side. They got themselves into a 2-point lead after 7 minutes, at which point the Carlo goalkeeper Robbie Malloy goes full Loris Karius and spills the ball, which goes into the path of Daniel Flynn, who palms it into the back of the net. Then a couple of minutes after that, Paul Broderick got fouled just outside the 45, steps away, he doesn't put it over the bar. Daniel Ledger steps up and puts the ball right into the back of the net from outside 45 metres. A complete Hames was made of it from the Kildare defence. To be fair to the keeper, he was kind of blindsided. So after that, it was a goal apiece, and then Kildare had a chance to open up the lead after 16 minutes. A penalty after Niall Kelly was clotheslined. Éanna O'Connor stepped up and missed it, saved by that man Robbie Malloy, who had made the mistake 10 minutes previously. Éanna O'Connor has been the debutant of note today. He's had a bit of a disaster so far for Kildare. He hasn't scored. He's missed 2 frees, 2 wides, 2 shots off the post, and 1 dropping short for Kildare so far. It is one goal and 4 points to Carlo, 1 goal and 3 points to Kildare, and it is the same old story in front of the posts for Kildare, you can say.
Okay, Owen Sheehan there in O'Connor Park. So 23 minutes gone those games. It's Cork who lead by 5 points, and as Owen said there, Carlo lead Kildare by 1. And this is the problem for Karius now. He's already enshrined in popular culture. The goalkeeper went full Loris Karius on us, and that's just going to be his lot now.
And the other thing is, even if he turns his career around, he's going to make mistakes, because every player makes mistakes.
Sure.
So, but every time he makes a mistake, people write him off again and say, that's the same guy again. How could you trust him?
Yeah, that's why you need to be a really strong manager to sign him, Bernard, because it will look like a bad call if he makes a mistake on a big stage ever again.
Yeah,
what more evidence did you need not to sign this guy?
Yeah, because every dog on the street knows the answer, that he's a poor goalkeeper. But and I think it will need to be an experienced manager who's very, very comfortable in his own skin, who has the mental fortitude to actually support this guy. And it obviously probably has to be quite a good deal as well, transfer-wise.
Stephen Hunt mentioned, and there's a couple of other pieces as well, about that this, his chickens coming home to roost, that Klopp didn't address the goalkeeping situation. But that's not strictly true, because when he came in, he had Mignolet as goalkeeper, and a lot of people were saying in his first transfer window, the January, when he should move for a goalkeeper, he didn't. The following summer, he moved for Karius. That he waited. Karius was the one he wanted. Like, Karius came second, was regarded as second only to Manuel Neuer in the Bundesliga. So he was very highly rated. He was the kind of goalkeeper he wanted. Put him in straight away, didn't work out, but put Mignolet back in. Then this season been rotating, eventually went with Karius. And I saw Dave Henderson on Twitter, who'd be a famous goalkeeping family here, very good keeper himself, and he was saying, and he would have a lot of experience as goalkeeping coach. He said a lot of the goalkeeping coaches now are spending working too much on their footwork, because they want the sweeper keeper and somebody able who's comfortable with the ball at their feet, and basic handling has been neglected. And Karius has been seen as a sweeper keeper, and maybe that's. I think the second mistake was a bigger deal than the first. The first was kind of freakish, but the second one was. I think he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know whether to catch it or punch it or head it. He just,
Yeah, and I'd be the same thing. I think Hunt is making the same point as well. I think if you were looking at signing him, you would say the Benzema goal was almost freakish and is unlikely to happen again. It was just an odd moment, an odd misjudgment. But actually, the third goal is his bread and butter. I mean, if that would concern you more if you were about to pull the trigger on signing him. You would think he's likely to face that scenario plenty. Especially now. I mean, we'll all be having pot shots at Karius.
But the strange thing, Liverpool actually defended quite well.
Yeah, I know.
Because Lovren was put up about everybody's a potential weak point. And other than Sadio Mane was their best player.
Yeah, and he was involved in the goal as well for Mane. So there'll be weeks, I think, of analysis of that game, and we'll see what happens with Karius. The rugby then, you're one of many writing about the rugby, Bernard. So beside your piece, we have Brennan Fanning, ruthless Leinster double up in imperious fashion. We have Neil Francis, 3 moments of sublime skill put Blues into a different orbit. He's talking, Francis is reminded of playing against David Campese before. Ball was bobbling unpredictably. Campese had to run back as quickly as he could. When he went down on the ball, he was going to get a good kicking from at least 6 Irish players who were in hot pursuit. At full pace, he lowered his left hand and scooped the ball up on the fly. Without any change of pace, he took the ball away from danger and went back on the counter-attack. The crowd gasped in amazement. It is rare in any test match I played that I would actually stop and almost applaud such genius. It took the breath away, and you knew that his name would be in the pantheon of greats when he retired. In the 58th minute of yesterday's match, Jordan Larmour did something similar. and he's kind of amazed by it. Really, just that moment of brilliance. He says, "A truly superb performance yesterday to cap off a most memorable season. Congratulations to the whole squad." So, I mean, Neil Francis is Leinster's biggest fan at the moment. It's all turnaround. But like he's glowing about the performance. Everyone is. Fitting finale to an outstanding campaign. You're playing up to Pro 14 here. It's a hell of a season for the Pro 14, and we got a final to befitting of what you think was a brilliant season.
I think we did. And I think we had the two best teams over the course of the season. Obviously, Glasgow finished top of their section, but if you look at Scarlets and Leinster, they both went deep in the Champions Cup as well. So I think that showed that they were the two teams who deserved. And I think they put on a cracking game for us. I was really impressed by Leinster in terms of the energy and physicality and vibrancy they showed. I thought last week against Munster they were a little bit tired, and the question was, could they back it up again? Obviously, I think the Racing game would have been emotionally and physically very draining on them, but they came out yesterday and they were outstanding.
A quote from Johnny Sexton in the Sunday Independent: "A lot of us still haven't trained since the Champions Cup final."
Yeah, at this stage of the season, you don't need you have experienced guys like Johnny and the Siwa. It's more getting yourself right mentally. They wouldn't have changed a hell of a lot. Leinster have their patterns, their strike plays, their defensive systems, and even Easton Siwa said that he didn't train all week. Rory O'Loughlin trained, but those big game players at this stage of the season, the reserves are there in the legs. It's just a case of getting yourself fresh enough to play. And I thought it was outstanding. And I think it shows the quality of the coaching staff to not push that button too hard. To be able to say, listen, we know what we're about. We just got to get ready mentally, and I think they were mentally and physically. They were ready. Physically, obviously, by not overtraining, and I thought it was incredibly impressive. And Scarlets are a very good side defensively, and Leinster over the last 4 weeks put 40 points on them yesterday and 38 points in the Champions Cup semi-final. That's impressive.
Yeah. Sexton made the point as well. We used 55 players to get into the final, so we felt we were representing them. For a lot of us, we've only played 5 or 6 games all season, so we had to win it for the squad. You make 2 points in your piece I wanted to pick up in here. One is about Nasewa, which you can explain because you play with him. And the other is, you say it was interesting that despite a directive coming from World Rugby this week that they're going to trial lowering the allowed tackle height, the match officials yesterday weren't as concerned about the high shots, and it was only when a TMO highlighted a high tackle by Scott Williams and Sexton in the 51st minute that we had one penalised. So on the last point first, we'll get to Nasewa.
Yeah.
We need to lower the tackle height in rugby, and
fairness to the referees.
The
fairness to the referees. That's is a new trial, a law trial that's been tested in the Junior World Cup over next month. So they weren't.
But tested for a reason.
Tested for a reason. But the reality was, I felt there was 4 or 5 instances yesterday which were penalties in the current law. And I just thought they were very, very soft in terms of enforcing those rules. And even
what's a high shot now?
High shot is any contact with the head,
But neck's fine. Neck's
neck's not fine either. No,
yeah,
it's
so
not.
Above the
shoulder. Yeah, exactly. But the new law is below the nipple.
And is that going to be enforceable?
Well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, generally these things, 80% of these trials become law. And if you look at how important player safety is, player welfare, concussion, I think it's going to come in. I do think it's going to come in. And it's going to. But yesterday, for me, I thought even the Sexton penalty that he got for the Scott Williams high shot. I mean, it led to a turnover. It was a big moment in the game. Scarlets actually nearly scored off it. It took the TMO to come in maybe a minute later. I mean, the linesman, the referee were oblivious to it. I actually thought it could have been a yellow. It wasn't. So for me, that's an area of the game that I think, listen, we'll adapt as coaches quickly. You know.
Well, I was going to ask you. So I would presume, say the trial goes well and they bring in you can't tackle above the nipple. I mean, that's going to dramatically change the tactics available, because if your hands are free now in a tackle, the offloading game could absolutely take off if you're smart.
Yeah, but you're going to have to generate a lot more as a tackler. You're going to have to generate a lot more power through that low tackle. So you're basically going to have to change his.
How can you generate more power? How can these guys generate more power?
There's some very, very good chop tacklers. So some of the defensive system use chop on top, so one guy low, one guy high. But the big thing for me is, I think if we know as coaches that anything above the nipple is going to be a penalty, and even to that extent, the choke tackle, which is where you're trying to hold them up. I mean, that could very easily be refereed as a high tackle. The whole tackle height is going to drop, and I think, obviously then what defensive coaches will do is they'll focus on that chop tackle, which you take the leg. You're going to try and generate as much power as possible. Most players, they offload going forward when they've dominated the collision.
So you need to hit them back.
You need them back. You got to move them back or move them to the side. And then what your outside and inside defender will do is they'll close off that offload channel.
And actually, so you'd have a better feel for this over the course of a standard season. If you're talking about head injuries or concussion injuries, so I would presume this is to protect the man being tackled. So let's stop the high shots on him.
Yeah.
What percentage of the tackler shots are actually off a knee or off a hip where they get a concussion?
I would say 50%.
Yeah, at least.
50%.
Yeah.
We actually have a lot of times where it's like just head clashes as well from the high tackles, but we have a lot where it's just bad technique. They try and chop the hip, but they get their hip on the front of the
side,
the wrong side, and that's because that's where a lot of power comes from.
Yeah.
Like a lot of your power is from between your knee and your hips. So for me, they're worse shots in terms of injury risk.
Keane Healy taking a bad one at Twickenham,
Very bad.
but he got his head on the wrong side.
Yeah, but again, that's up to us as coaches to drill good technique. I mean, and the big thing for us, so we had an injury crisis this year in the Dragons, where we had 26 players injured. We were like playing a lot of academy kids, and because we had so many players injured and we didn't have many left, we cut back on contact in training, and we started to pick up a lot of contact injuries
In
matches because the players' technique was exposed under fatigue. Now, we have to be very careful that we don't over. It's a really fine line between.
Because Donnacha O'Callaghan was on the show across the season, and I know the physio and the trainers were waiting for him the next morning when he'd been on the radio, but he felt he was doing way more contact than he had done in Munster training with Worcester and thought it was too much.
Yeah, well, I know their defence coach, so he's a big pusher of train hard, play easy. And he's massively focused on contact. But the trend in the game now is very much modified contact. In training, and very short bursts of full on. So we would, I'd say most teams would only do between 12 and 15 minutes a week of full on. Some teams would do less than that. But what I'm saying, I don't think you have to do full on contact to improve the skill. I think that what you need to do, you need to build in contact into your prehab, into your rehab, and at certain parts of the season. So I think that for us as coaches, we need to coach the technique well.
And is that largely where it was 10 years ago in your playing days, the technique around tackling? Is it fairly similar?
Yes, it's fairly similar, I think. But players are able to generate a lot more power now.
Okay.
That's the problem. And players are, like, you got people like Jordan Larmour, for example, his footwork, just gets him out of trouble, which changes the picture for the defender, and that can be where there can be clashes. So for us, it's about, I suppose, building footwork, technique, power into the defensive system. But I do think it's a positive that the tackle height will naturally drop because we will adapt to the laws.
In your piece, Bernard, Joe, I think, was about to reference this, but what you said about Nasiwa during the Six Nations, I find very interesting because I never really thought about this, about his influence when the internationals aren't around. In what way was he important?
Well, the thing is, so for example, Leinster played 22 games in the Pro 14. Sexton started 3. Rob Kearney, Cian Healy, and James Ryan started 4. James Ryan's young, but he's already a leader in the team. You're taking out that experience and leadership. So match week is different. So on a Monday, and in fairness, this used to be a big issue in Leinster, was when we didn't have the Galacticos, we could go to the borders and lose, even though on paper we had a team who should have been able to win. So I think what Nasiwa gives you is a foreign player who's there in November, he's there in the Six Nations, and to be honest, the reason he's so special is because he comes in on a Monday morning before a Zebra Treviso or Dragons or Glasgow, whoever it is, without his international buddies, and he has the same attitude as he has the week of a Champions Cup final against Racing. And that just, if you're youngsters in a team, when you've got less experience, they look up to the senior players for guidance and role models. And he just portrays those high standards week in, week out. And I think, he spoke in his press conference afterwards, he spoke about why he's retiring, and he spoke about Leinster have high standards and I can't meet them anymore. How many players have the self-awareness to actually say, listen, because most of us, like a boxer, they'll go till the end, and it's not your choice. And I think he that shows you how significant he is in that culture, that he feels that he just can't do what he needs to do, and he's going to walk out at the top.
He's been an amazing player. A brief note, because there's so many other pieces I want to get to. You mentioned the younger players there, and you're working with a full spectrum. And frankly, you're getting old.
Absolutely.
How different are 20-year-olds to when you were even seeing your guy in a dressing room? Because we have touched outside, and I was interested that you feel there is a real generation gap. These are there are a different type of people coming through now to 20-year-olds, even when,
Massively.
Rob Kearney was coming through.
Massively. So if you're not playing Six Nations weekend, we'd all watch the rugby. I think our generation would have all watched the rugby. We'd come in Monday morning, and did you see what Stuart Hogg did in Murrayfield, or did you see what Vincent Clerc did in France? A lot of this younger generation don't watch any rugby. They don't watch rugby. They don't. Some of the kids we have don't have a TV in their house. They don't have a TV. They don't have Sky. They don't have BT. They get everything in highlights on their phone. So we've had to change how we try and educate them, and so we give them a lot of mini tasks. Research shows that the best number to work in a group together on a project is 4. Okay, so we break them into 4s, and we give them little tactical challenges where they've got to go and watch some footage as a 4 and report back to the group. And there's an award for the best group. We send them stuff on WhatsApp. We send a lot of our video content now through WhatsApp. Because that's basically where they get the information. And also, I mean, it's a tricky one. Like we have a common area as such, and I walk to my office. You go past the corridor where the common area is, and you see 7 or 8 players sitting down but not engaging. Everyone's on their phone. You're saying, listen, there's a real opportunity missed there to actually understand a little bit more about each other, build a relationship.
But see, it's funny, this seems to be across a lot of sports, Bernard, because going back to Klopp, I was reading a thing about Klopp's first week at Liverpool. There was one of the coaches, or one of the backroom staff, was walking across the training pitch at Melwood, and he said to the players, "Who's that?" And none of them could say, none of them knew his name. He said, "I want you to know everybody's name in this club and say hello to them every day." And the people are in their own little bubble, and they're kind of removed from it. You were saying outside, Bernard, that even a huge amount of your players, or players in the academy, was it, or single parent families?
Yeah, 63% of our academy come from single parent families, which just has a difference in terms of a fatherly figure role model. You have, it's just different in terms of how you communicate with them, and their understanding of discipline or leadership or direction. So it's fascinating. It's how we can actually make them more all rounded. I mean, we had one kid and we put him on a building site for a week because a very talented kid who we just didn't feel understood that the opportunity rugby was going to give him and how lucky he is to have that opportunity. And after 2 days, he rang and said, "I get it." And I said, "No, you got to finish the week." But the difference with him when he came back, he was the first guy to the station, and I think it could be a turning point for him in his career.
Because I remember reading this about Wenger, because there's so many people have criticised Wenger for, they said, why doesn't he have defenders that they used to have, the likes of Steve Boulder, Martin Cohn, or Tony Adams? And he was saying, I know this, those are the kind of characters I want. He said, but this generation are different. They're far more sensitive. They're not as tough-minded as those guys. And he said it's very hard to find that kind of breed.
Gary Breen was on, and he told a story recently in the Arsenal dressing room where one of the players was getting it was a bit of a shouting match in the dressing room, and one player was getting it, and Wenger said, no, don't shout at him. Those days are gone. So that's where we are. Let's check in on half times in these games, and then we'll finish off on the rugby stories. There's a few other pieces to get to. Dave McIntyre, Semple Stadium.
Oh, Tipperary are in huge trouble, Joe. It's half-time. Cork leading Tip by 115 to 1-6. So a 9-point lead for Cork 35 minutes in. We have seen Cork start the game brilliantly, leading by 7 points to no score, 4 from Seamus Harnedy. Tip took a quarter of an hour to get their first point, but that was a goal from Jason Ford. They added another 2, and that was then the end of the Tip purple patch. They've been outscored 1-8-4 in the 20 minutes since. At one end, Shane Kingston's on fire. He's got 1-3. Harnedy is 4. Horgan is 3. And at the other end, the Cork full back line are doing a really good job. And John McGrath, Seamus Callanan, and 4. The Tip attack has just 1-4 from play between them. By contrast, the Cork forwards have 1-12 from play, so Tip in trouble all over the field. Last weekend's issues in Limerick seem to be far from a once-off on the evidence of this first half. Cork are just too quick, too accurate, first to the ball from back to front, and it's their forwards doing all of the damage. Tipperary in that changing room beneath me have an awful lot of soul searching to do. They are 9 points adrift. Add into the mix, Joe, the fact that Cork have fired 10 wides in that first half. It could be so much worse. Half time here, Cork 1-15, Tipperary 1-6.
Okay, confirmation, it is serious for Tipperary now. We thought they might bounce back. It's not looking likely. 9-point gap. Let's go over to Owen, who's looking on in Tullamore. Half-time there, Owen.
Yeah, but it's great for Tipperary. It's even more grave for Kildare here. And Bernard Jackman, he might be a happy man tonight because Carlow are up by 5 points at half-time. It is 1-8 to 1-3 here. They have smothered Kildare. They have not let them inside their own D, and they have broke against them with accuracy, although not with pace all the time. They've allowed the Cribbins to score 3 scores from range, all from play. But the goal they conceded was a bizarre goalkeeping error that allowed Daniel Flynn to fist at the net inside just 7 minutes. That put Kildare a point ahead. But Carlow's response was brilliant. They scored a similarly unusual goal. Daniel St. Leger scoring from outside the 45-metre line, actually, going past the keeper, who was a little bit blindsided by a smart run from Paul Broderick. Then, in around 16 minutes' time, in 60 minutes into the game, rather, Kildare had a penalty. It was a stonewall penalty. Niall Kelly was clotheslined. Aina O'Connor stepped up after missing his first free, and it was saved by the goalkeeper, Robbie Malloy. Aina O'Connor has not scored yet. He has missed all his frees. One hit the post. He has had a bit of a disaster from dead balls, and you'd suspect Kildare will change it in the second half. To finish off the half, Paul Broderick has scored 4 frees for Carlow. He is unbelievably accurate. They have had not a single wide. They haven't put a single ball short. Kildare have had 6 wides. They've hit 2 off the post and put 1 short. They've had all the ball but can't convert it, and they trail by 5 points here. This could be a disaster for Kildare this evening.
Okay, Owen Sheehan there at half-time. Carlow, well, this would be very, very serious for Cian O'Neill, to say the least. So they lead by 5. A short break. We're going to finish off the papers here with Kieran and Bernard. Back in just 1 second.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
In association with the Air Sport app, allowing you to cast your favourite sporting action from your tablet or mobile phone straight to your TV.
Tech Talk. With Jess Kelly.
This week on Tech Talk. Looking for a laptop for less than 500 quid or an MP3 player to rival the old school iPod? We'll have product recommendations galore. We explore the ethical implications of artificial intelligence and head to Cavan to code like a girl.
Tech Talk. With Jess Kelly.
Download the podcast first now or tune in this evening at 6.
On News Talk.
I don't know. I'm not in that mindset.
I don't have time. Yeah.
It's just keep going, and maybe not thinking of those things, whether it's a mental block, I don't know. Yeah, it's probably something we do need to think about.
We've never discussed it.
Jane, it would be a huge relief to know that you're financially secure in some way. It would be for the benefit of our kids if anything happens to either of us.
No one should spend time thinking about the worst things that can happen. That's why VHI has made setting up life insurance simple. Search VHI Life and get a quick quote, or call us on 1890 444444. VHI Healthcare DAC trading as VHI Healthcare is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland and is tied to Zurich Life Assurance plc for VHI Life Term Insurance.
The Arnott's 175th birthday super celebration event is now on. 20% off almost everything across all departments, including fashion, accessories, homeware, kitchenware, furniture and electrical. Shop the super celebration event in store and online now at arnotts.ie. Must end Sunday.
At Bruce Betting, we're celebrating 40 years as one of Ireland's leading bookmakers with the launch of our brand new website and iOS app. Packed with features and easy to use, the new Bruce Betting app includes ACCA insurance, cash out and live casino. Bruce Betting, giving you more. In store, online and now on your phone. Please gamble responsibly.
It's official. Summer is here and Britain is 20% off for a limited period only on Irish ferries. That's 20% off. Go anywhere you like in Britain in your own car and with all the luggage you like. Except the luggage isn't 20% off, it's free. Book now on irishferries.com and get 20% off. Go Irish Ferries. Travel together. Terms and conditions apply.
Get summer football ready with this exclusive competition at Curry's PC World.
Football?
I'm afraid so, but there's a 1 in 20 chance of a free TV.
So I don't have to watch football?
You can watch anything you want.
Okay, what do I do?
Just buy any TV 55 inches or larger.
I'm going to need Daddy for this.
He's gonna love it. We've got Ireland's largest range.
Will I even watch the final? Maybe.
At Curry's PC World, we help you get it right. Entrance must be 18 or over, ROI only, ends 26th of June, full terms. Curry's PC World, freetv.ie.
The truth about real innovation is that it's hard to imagine how life was ever any other way. Like the emergence of hybrid as the inevitable alternative to diesel. And because Lexus has always anticipated the future, every new Lexus is a self-charging hybrid, boldly combining brave design and imaginative technology to produce stunning cars that deliver an effortless drive. No plug-ins, no diesel, no compromise. Experience the ultimate in hybrid. Lexus. Experience amazing. Test drive the Lexus hybrid range today and experience amazing at Lexus M50 North. Visit lexusm50north.ie.
You often listen to your head.
This chest pain. I think it might be getting worse. Is it nothing much to worry about, or is it serious?
But you should always listen to your heart. Whether chest pain, palpitations, or shortness of breath, or if you have any concerns at all about your heart, you should get it checked. Come into Matter Private Urgent Cardiac Care. We're open 24/7 and you don't need an appointment to be seen by our cardiologist-led team. You can also speak to a cardiac nurse anytime on free phone 1800 24/7 999. Matter Private Urgent Cardiac Care. Listen to your heart.
Don't book another dinner until you've read the Sunday Times Guide to 52 great neighbourhood restaurants. Try something new every week of the year without breaking the bank with Ernie Wally and our team's list of hotspots. Plus, Martin Moran pores over the wine list to ensure you'll find the right pairing for every meal. Only in the Sunday Times this weekend.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
In association with Air. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League game on the Air Sport Pack.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. So we're midway through the papers and it's half-time as well in the two o'clock matches. So big news from both really in different ways. Tipperary are struggling, there's no doubt. They're 9 points down to Cork at half-time. 115 to 1-6. A long way back for Tipperary at Semple Stadium. 9 points down to Cork. And then we are looking at, I suppose you do have to put it down as a huge shock, but people were worried in some respects for Kildare coming into this game. It's Carlow 1-8, Kildare 1-3. Carlow 1-8, Kildare 1-3. A 5-point gap at half-time in O'Connor Park. So we've spent the 2 or 3 minute ad break there, Bernard Jackman and Kieran Cunningham bitching about phones. We'll go back to the sport. We all agree they're terrible, I think is the short version. Just something that caught my eye as we leave the rugby. Hugh Farley is looking less at the Leinster win and more just at Joe Schmidt and the level of control he has now over the provinces, Bernard. And I guess you're probably experiencing a similar shift in Wales at the moment. So the headline, quality control, powered by the dictatorial brilliance of Joe Schmidt. Irish rugby finally has its priorities straight. Now for the World Cup, he says. And he touches on the fact that Declan Kidney, although he never went public, he says, was definitely frustrated, operated within a system that didn't prioritise the national side, where European Cup rugby ruled the roost. He said the chronic lack of options laid bare by the Tom Court destruction at Twickenham in 2012, and so now talks about what Joe Schmidt has done, and then just has several examples. So Matt O'Connor speaks out against the IRFU player management scheme at one point. Hasn't lasted very long. I know results didn't also go his way, but he makes that point. Ruan Pienaar, huge almost protest in Ulster about his departure. We don't care was the IRFU position. Simon Zebo, cut ruthlessly. Schmidt and Nusafora visit Leinster the week of a Champions Cup game to deliver the Carberry news. And then obviously, and Hugh Farley does emphasise this, he says, I know none of you care out there, but the media this year cut in a big way. And it's all Joe Schmidt. He's got complete control now and he heads towards next season with everything lined up the way he wants it.
Yeah, I think it's a very good article and it's very true. And I think even going back to Warren Gatlin's time, he felt that he wasn't getting support in terms of changing the overall organisation of Irish rugby. I'm sure for Declan there was frustrations with that. And I think if you look at what's happened in Irish rugby, obviously we've found, I think you can have that level of control, or as he says, dictatorship, if you have the right guy. You know, the person who actually understands what high performance looks like. And then if you look at the change there, if you made in terms of how they run themselves, the committee just took a step back to a certain extent, and David Nusafora was appointed as a high performance manager. So his job is to actually look at the big picture all the time. And the problem is, if you don't have somebody who's able to make those hard decisions, it's always short term, it's always parochial. And that will actually harm the overall health of Irish rugby long term. And I think this model, it suits us perfectly. I mean, you look at England at the moment, there's tension between the English Premiership clubs and the national side, because is Eddie Jones breaking players, etc. But it's a different model. Whereas we, potentially because of our size, that can be a strength. The fact that we're so small, we've only 4 teams to control. But I think the big thing is we've got the right people at the top. And Team Ireland are successful now, but it also shows, Munster getting to 2 semi-finals in a year of transition to a certain extent. Leinster obviously going from strength to strength. The big challenge now is to get Connacht and Ulster back. And I think that they will. Andy Friend is a coach at Leinster Foreign as well. Everything I've heard about him is very positive. And Dan McFarlane is a guy I'm friends with, who I know is a very good coach. So, hopefully within the next year or two, Ulster and Connacht are back up, and the Irish team continues to be successful. But I do think if you have the right people in place, that level of control is a good thing.
Yeah, because if only that word you meant.
You can trust Joe Schmidt. You know, if he says it goes, it's not like he's screwed up the last few years of Irish rugby too badly. So you kind of have to say, well, okay, we can go with you on this. You want to make a point in this, Kieran?
Yeah, no, just the word you mentioned at the end, control, and that's in the headline, quality control. And I think control is at the heart of it. If you read through this piece, a lot of this has come from Joe Schmidt, that he's got everybody singing for the same hymn sheet, and that he is in control of what has happened. Like, there's a line here by Hugh. It's been a seminal season in the sense that never before have we seen such clarity of thinking and unity of purpose in Irish rugby to ensure the success of the national side trumps all other considerations, as it always should have. And if you look at the other most successful coach in Irish sport over the last few years, Brian Cody, Jim Gavin, they have the control. They are in charge, without doubt. Billy Walsh, one of the main reasons he had to go when he went to America was he wasn't being given the control he needed. And that Joe Schmidt definitely has, and it's been a remarkable year for Irish rugby. And, you would have to think we can get past that World Cup hurdle that's kept...
Something will go badly wrong if we don't. Just one last point in this, and then we'll move on to some GA pieces and Chris Froome as well as in the papers. Wales is heading more in this direction. We're seeing central contracts. Is Warren Gatland going to get to a point where he's telling you, listen, Bernard, I want you to play that guy in this position this week if you could?
Well, yeah, we actually, you can do that with us because we're a region owned, or we're owned by the union. We're the only region who is.
When did that 2 years ago?
No, only last year ago. Last June.
This was the first year.
This was the first year of it. So, but having said that,
is he wrecking your life then?
No, he's really good. I mean, I have a good relationship with him, and I think that's the key is to have good relationship, good communication, and good trust. We're trying to develop as many players to play for Wales as possible, and we had 6 going on the Argentinian tour. One guy got injured last week, but during the Six Nations we only had 2 in the squads, and we've signed Ross Moriarty. We've signed a couple of other players who we feel can play for Wales. So we want to be a big contributor for Wales, and that we believe will help us, like it does with Leinster, Munster, be better as a region. I think what Wales are looking at, if you look at Wayne Pivac's post-match comments, he said Leinster a great team, great system, and a great budget. And the big issue for Welsh rugby is getting that level of funding, and that's what's happening at the moment. There's a big discussion going on between the 4 regional chairmen and the WRU about how we can get more investment into the regional, so we can be more competitive.
Okay, we'll leave the rugby. I can ask you more questions about that for the next hour. Let's touch on some of the other stuff. Like, we're not going to get to everything here. Stuff we've jotted down, by the way, because we often don't get to everything that we want to for people if you're buying the papers. The Chris Froome coverage we will get to in a few moments. And then GAA-wise, there's a really good interview with Alan Kearns. We'll try and touch on that. Mark O'Shea is very good on Tyrone Crumbling. Henry Shefflin and Paul Galvin also caught your eye, both in the Sunday Times. For the purposes of time, Kieran, you could neatly sum up the most interesting thing about Shefflin. Okay, he's talking about Kilkenny, Galway.
Let me just
but actually, the most interesting point Shefflin makes, frankly, is about the interesting challenge that Micheál O'Donoghue has now, because they've won the All-Ireland, and it's about how close you're going to get to your players. It was just a small byproduct of it.
I find that very interesting, because it's something I haven't really thought about it. But when you have a breakthrough All-Ireland like Galway's, and like I saw this, like I'm from Donegal, and I saw this when Donegal won a few years ago, that there's so many functions that the players and management go to, and they spend a lot of time in each other's company, and there's a lot of celebrations, and they're having a few pints together over the winter, and the bond becomes, the distance isn't there, which can be dangerous for coach and players. And Henry Shefflin makes the point that was there, and then the team holiday, the same thing. And Henry Shefflin makes the point that at the very beginning of his time, Brian Cody would socialise with the players in team holidays. A couple of years into his tenure, they'd see him at the airport, and then they wouldn't see him until they were getting the plane back. That he deliberately kept that distance because he had to make the hard decisions. And Donoghue is coming into a summer where he spent a lot of time with his players, And that's, Bernard, you're a coach. I'd be curious in your take on this. Can that be a problem?
I think you got to be very careful about how far you go socially with them. Actually, at a coaching conference I was at last week, Eddie Jones spoke, and he spoke about having professional relationships. Even with just coaches, it's what can you do to make us better today? And obviously, we want to be close. You understand people's families and friends and issues, but try not to get carried away with that. And I think you need to have a good relationship with players, have a rapport, but be very careful socialising, because at some stage you're going to have to make a decision about the future.
He says he wonders here if anyone mentioned this to Donoghue, because he says not even, as you said, not even Cody was that clued in at the start. So that's kind of an interesting one. We must chat to Michael O'Donoghue about that at some stage. I know both of you like Paul Galvin, page 12 so many times. Minnows have to do something different to upset big guns. Bernard?
Yeah, I have a bit of inside knowledge in this, because I actually spoke to London so it's about a talk he gave to London last week, and I spoke to London. Kieran Deely, who's their head coach, he works with the S&C, Strength and Conditioning Department of QPR. I knew from his time in Wexford, and I think he's a really proactive coach. But the reason I liked this article was, it was interesting that he asked the 27 or 28 players togged out if they own a football. Only one man put his hand up, and he wasn't even sure if he's telling the truth. And he said every player present was wearing a pair of boots for £100. Yet few would ever think to buy a football. And it's kind of gone back to this generation gap. We all had a couple of footballs in our boot or in our back garden, and we'd go and play with a couple of neighbours or whatever. Whereas we certainly feel now that the only real opportunity these guys get to practice their skills is when it's facilitated by whatever team they're in. And he also just spoke a little bit about their belief system, and also if they try and copy what Carlo are doing or what Mayo are doing in terms of their identity, they're not going to get there. Where he's just talking about why in a city so diverse as London, resourceful and creative, full of opportunity, with a county team try and ape what happens in isolated areas, and just basically tapping into that whole exile, immigrant, second generation, third generation, first generation Irish, and create a real identity. I think that they're trying to do that, and it's just an interesting, it's a non-sexy story, but I don't see players going around London kicking a ball,
in the streets,
but it does go back to where like Wayne Rooney, Gaza, etc., how they learned and developed their skill set.
Yeah, because I find it very interesting as well, because I would know Kieran as well. I've had a bit of contact with him over the years, and I found him an interesting guy. I did an interview with him a few months ago, and he spent a couple of months over the winter. He took the Trans-Siberian Express. He went to China. While he was in Beijing, he sent Jim McGuinness a message and met him for coffee and picked his brain for a couple of hours, went all around Asia. And he did this on his own. He travelled on his own for months. And there's not many inter-county managers that do that. But I found this idea of Paul Galvin's very interesting, of tapping into the London Irish thing. I think 7 of the players who started against Sligo for London were London born, including the captain Liam Gaffigan. And in the dressing room, I know Kieran had this thing, I think it was all their club jerseys from home were on the wall of the dressing room, but maybe feed into the London Irish thing as well, kind of a sporting version of the Pogues, that it's a different identity to Ireland. This is something we have, and it's unique, and feed of this, rather than hearken to home and trying to do the same as home, because we are very different. And I wonder, could it be onto something there? Something I never thought of, and it's an interesting idea.
Very interesting point, yeah. So the whole squad, one of them owned a football. And because he makes the point actually in the piece, Galvin does, and it's very true. He's like, you never see a hurler who doesn't have a sliotar with his hurl. Even they might be walking on the street sometimes in someone bopping away, or will have a few pucks against the wall. He's like, you all own fancy boots, and one of you has a football. Even he's like, I'll take bare feet with the football over the fancy boots.
And maybe that's a generational thing, because I was talking to Bernard about this outside.
We're sounding very old here. Can I just say, everything's generational right now.
But
back in our day.
But I still have footballs at home. I would always go out the garden and kick a ball against the wall. And I find it odd that people don't have a ball. I have to be honest.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, actually. I don't. But then I was away for the weekend, and one of the lads took out a football, and just the simple pleasure of kicking football, I was like, oh, it's nice.
Brilliant.
I missed actually kicking a football, because, this is the way it goes. I thought Alan Kearns is worth a mention. I think it's an interesting piece, Alan. So it seems Alan Kearns has raised €5 million for his various charities over the last number of years in Africa. I suppose the part of his story I didn't quite realise, Kieran, is that he was pretty struggling a little bit for inspiration. Like Dennis Walsh talks to him and it seems, things weren't going well with Galway, bad breakup in his personal life, just in a bit of a stupor and not sure what he wanted to do and just a bit down. Now, he does even jokingly say, look, they were high-class first problems. Galway's not going well and various things. But he actually seems, even just from a well-being point of view, was kind of looking for something in his life, and charity came along at the right time for him. That's the gist of what he's saying.
And he's been good for the charity and the charity's been good for him. It seems to be the message, and it's been remarkably successful. Like, he's taken quite a few groups out over the years with, players, etc. Donald O'Cusack was one of those that went out. There's a few have gone out, and there's a lot of stuff in here about just read a little bit. While Cairns was this is in Zambia, I think. A sister, one of the staff members in the rehab centre, was dying of AIDS. Kathy took him to visit her deep in the bush. Kathy is a nun from Tipperary called Kathy Crawford. The woman was worse than they thought, and Kathy promised to come back with a jeep and take her to the hospital. By the time we returned, she was dead. Kathy would be a hearse as well at times because they had no transport. I was blown away by what she was doing. I was working with the kids. They were amazing. They had an unbreakable spirit. They smiled through everything. They danced through their troubles. You see how happy they are with so little. And it's such a cliche to throw out that this gives you perspective, but I think Alan has found, he's found something in this that's helped him and is helping a lot of others, and even things in there I've never really thought about how difficult it is for disabled people.
Yeah, well, he says
in that kind of world.
Up until very recently, they're cast aside.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that. It's grim. Yeah,
we can barely survive even if we're able-bodied and able to move around.
Yeah.
He says they're just left behind. They're left in a corner. The situation with the charity is they've merged with Self-Help Africa now, so all the governance and finances are kind of being looked after. So it seems it's gone the right direction, and talked about bringing people out to Africa, as you said, Kieran, and he says it often, it strips them to the core. He kind of sees this happening when he brings people out. You have limited amounts of phone and email, the phone again, 10 days for you to stop and reflect, and when people are in that space, they're open to the big questions. What am I doing? Am I doing what I want to do? What the hell am I at? And to emphasise the point, Ronan Kennedy, former Leitrim footballer, there's a really nice little bit in the corner where he talked about going out with Kearns for a while. It says, before I went to Africa, I was in limbo. He'd struggled with his mental health. His mother and his partner were dealing with serious illnesses. He'd pushed all that to one side, frantic place of life, hadn't considered it, and talked about going out, and then almost, bawling tears when he was kind of forced to sit and think about things, and seems to have enjoyed working with the Kearns Foundation. So there's a picture of him with some kids in Zambia, all in their Leitrim kits. So it's an interesting piece. It's worth checking out, Alan Kearns. And then Chris Froome. What is your take on all this, Bernard? Do you follow the cycling? Because people are sick of me and Kieran talking about it.
I have been following, to be honest. And I saw his performance up the mountain.
Did you watch it?
I saw the highlights of it.
So you would actually sit and watch?
I would when something like that happens.
Yeah,
it
right.
goes through my Twitter feed, and I looked at it, and it just seemed outstanding. Hard to believe, incredible. And I do think the fact that
sorry, are you trying to make as much noise with that newspaper?
That investigation.
Are you actually trying to?
Well,
the fact that investigation just hasn't
concluded.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he still, by performing like that, it just adds to the whole skeptic in me.
Yeah.
But I just find it hard to believe that the governing body have let this continue so long without a clear decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything for sport, in my opinion.
No. I'm just going to pause to go and check in on the two matches. We'll go over to Owen in a second. Semple Stadium. Dave McIntyre, we've been away. Talk to us.
Oh, it's an absolutely phenomenal game of hurling now, Joe, and Tipperary have just got their second goal of the game. Noel McGrath, after a blistering start to the second half in which Tip got the first 5 points to reduce the arrears from 9 to 4. Cork then got 3 of the next 4 scores. Pat Horgan, Conor Lahan then got 2, and Daniel Carney with a brilliant score, his 4th in play. But that goal from Noel McGrath adds his tally now to 1-3, has suddenly got Tipperary as close to Cork as they've been since the 15th minute. It's Tipperary 2-13, 19 points to Cork's 1-19, and we still have 25 minutes to go. It's end-to-end stuff in the rain in Thurles.
Okay, game on. Let's go over to Owen Sheehan, who is watching where Carlo were leading at the break by 5. On the latest.
It's now 6 and the Carlo crowd are getting louder and louder and louder, and you start to think, will this Carlo side miss at all? As I said at half-time, they haven't had a single wide, they haven't hit the post, and not a single one has dropped short. Just a couple of moments ago, Kieran Moran, their wing back, came up the pitch and scored an absolute monster score from about 45 yards out. It looked like it was dropping short, but it was somehow carried over the bar, I should say. As I say that, Kildare have just brought it back to 5 points. That's a free there from Kevin Feely. They are starting to get a few more runners from the back off the shoulder, which is exactly what they need to break down this blanket, because Carlo are defending the D and they are not going to let you through unless you've got a runner going through, and Kildare seem to be awake to that idea now. It is 110 to 1-5 after 44 minutes.
Okay, we'll be back over to the lads at full time very shortly. So Bernard's talking there about just the general surprise that Froome is currently cycling with the salbutamol Vuelta situation hanging over him. If you're not sure what's happened, by the way, he's about to become the first British winner of the Giro, and he will also become just the 3rd rider in history to hold all of the 3 Grand Tours at the one time. The Tour, the Vuelta, and now the Giro. The records keep tumbling for him. It's his 6th Grand Tour title. So there's general unease, I would say, Kieran, in all the writing. I have Tom Carey here in The Telegraph, also in the Sunday Independent. Ollie Holt has a brief piece in the Mail. He says, he's obviously over in Kiev, but he says, my overriding feeling when I heard about Froome's jaw-dropping performance on stage 19 was, I'm glad I don't have to report on it. Yeah. Adam Crafton in the same paper talks about the unease. And then David Walsh is writing about it. So where did you go to for this story?
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw, his name escapes me for a moment, but he's a former Olympic cycling team coach here, and he was tweeting he's given up on the Giro and he's not going to watch the Tour. And it seemed to be related to what Froome has done. And David Walsh still seems to be dealing in a bit of double think in this. And he brings up, as for Froome with an adverse finding with asthma drugs, salbutamol hanging over him, he knows not whether the next stage will bring a doping ban or vindication. So he does mention that this salbutamol issue is there. But a couple of paragraphs down he goes, there's no evidence that Froome doped to deliver that scintillating performance on Friday, and while many will be sceptical, there are also reasons for believing Froome is a unique athlete and one blessed with mental toughness. That means accepting if there was some wrongdoing at the Vuelta last year, it was a one-off, which I find a big leap of faith to take.
Yeah, sorry, and it's going back to the whole Team Sky preparation. Dave Brailsford saying that the refueling plan was a game changer.
Yeah, they gave him gel and food.
Exactly. How are the other teams not copped on to this, ingenious refueling plan? And it's just
as in eating food.
Exactly. Yeah, at the right time. I mean, they don't have not the only team a monopoly on sports science. And it's just hard to believe that they're always that one step ahead. And now they're talking about this Australian coach, Tim Kerson, Team Sky. He discovered a kindred spirit. Someone is prepared to push himself as hard as for himself. It's just, I'm not sure how credible it is.
But you see, the Walsh thinking is difficult because he's been very critical of Sky in the last 18 months. Eventually, people will say. But he seems to still almost ring-fence Froome a little bit.
Yeah, he seems to have bought big time into Froome. Yeah, he's really bought big time into Froome.
And now he's also looking at the salbutamol thing and still saying, yeah, look, I mean, what he basically says is, he kind of sums up his feeling. He sort of says, it almost defines, yes, how one responds to Froome's feat depends on one's attitude to the sport and to the travails that surround Team Sky. I would think, in that case, you shouldn't really be wondering if...
I find it depressing as well because, like at the moment, the Ross is on in Ireland, which is a big event, and there's some great stories around that. Sam Bennett has provided brilliant stories.
Tommy Conlon makes the point that Sam Bennett's
Tommy has a piece on it worth reading, but it could be kind of overlooked that it's the stories that get the publicity in cycling now are always doping or doping related or doping questions.
It's everywhere here. I mean, there's big pieces like Adam Crafton in the Mail's a big piece, talks about Brailsford, says it's the best performance of Froome's career, one of the best days in the team's history. I think people get sick a little bit in their mouth when they're hearing Brailsford of all people talking about this is one of the best days in our history.
But for me, maybe I'm wrong, but I would always go to David Walsh as the go-to for me for cycling, and the fact that he's been. First of all, he was a massive promoter of Team Sky. The fact they let him spend time in camp, etc., and he was pushing this is the way forward, marginal gains, and then obviously that's been exposed. That has been exposed
horribly. Yeah.
But yes, you read that article, and you've got someone inside who should be an expert on it, and he's not very strong on it, and that's worrying.
Yeah, it's a
surprising.
strange one. He's surprising. Yeah, surprising. He's entitled to his honest opinion. And look, Froome says in all of these pieces, when the time is right, bloody hell, the time feels right about 6 months ago. But when the time is right, the information will come out and I'll be proven right. But you know, a lot of people did not understand how he was double the salbutamol levels. How that happens, I don't really know.
Well, one thing that just quickly jumped out at me across the papers is like Brendan Ingle to me would have been one of the greatest Irish coaches of all time, the boxing coach from Dublin, from Ringsend, who coached Nazim Hamed, Harold Graham, a lot of top boxers, and he died on Friday. And there's not a word on him in the papers as far as I can see. And I think I know there was stuff in yesterday's paper, but I think he deserved. I know it was a tricky week with so much going on between Champions League, GA, rugby, etc. But I think he deserved more coverage. And also related to that, Arthur Lanigan O'Keefe won gold at the World Cup in the modern pentathlon yesterday. It's not mentioned in any paper, and it shows how Olympic sports are completely forgotten about outside of Olympic years.
You can also pick a bad weekend to win. You know, it's Champions League final, and it's.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it just shows the narrowness of focus as well, that we tend to focus on the 2 or 3 main sports, and it's hard for sports outside of that to get oxygen.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. So we're pretty much done. Bernard, thanks so much for coming in. It's great to have you in and do the papers. Appreciate it. And the best of luck with next season. And Kieran Cunningham, I'm sure we'll see you soon enough. Is the familiarity breeding more love. So that
Sorry
was
about the papers. Sorry, we're up in the papers.
I think they pulled your mic down when you were doing it, so
okay.
hopefully it's not too bad.
What about one of those coughing?
I'll let people know the latest from O'Connor Park is Carlow 110, Kildare 1-6. So it's now a 4-point lead for Carlow with 54 minutes gone. And then in Semple Stadium, Tipperary 214, Cork 120. So that, by my bad maths, is Cork winning by 3. And they're underway as well between Longford and Meath. 3 points apiece. That one threw in 14 minutes ago. And that is where we are in terms of the live action. We'll take a short break. Updates from around the grounds coming up.